basically not just putting the blame on somebody like a Tony Camonte or a Tom Powers. Yeah, these guys are bad, but wait a minute, we can stand up to them. We have the power.
This movie represents what it is like to live in this industry.
Strangely enough, the character in the book Scarface by Armitage Trail, his name was Tony Guarino. Ben Guarino was his brother, and Ben Guarino is the name of this detective guy. So, you know, with the movie, they kind of went their own way, I think. They were just inspired.
Connections? I think not!
Cinematic fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am!
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today.
If you wanted something to do in between seasons,
when you're missing us dearly and life feels uneven,
we'll stop on by and give you a lift. Brought you a present.
You brought you a gift.
This is a bonus episode, a little bit different from the ones you know.
4 theme movies in a row. Welcome to the bonus. Thankful that you joined us. Now here's the bonus episode.
Welcome back to Cinematic Fantastic. Again, this is Jason and William.
And today, if a podcast is like being on a stage, and a stage is a world, then the world is ours.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason why we're saying that is because we are talking about 1932 movie called Scarface, not the 1983 version with Al Pacino, but this is the one with Paul Mooney, directed by Howard Hawks.
Yeah, that's the one Oh, wait.
Yeah?
Another possible way I could have transitioned into that was that I was playing Daytona earlier, which is a racing game. You play in Daytona, where you wanna be. It's got a good song. I finally figured out how to play the game, so I was just...
Okay, so how does that tie in?
Daytona is a place in Florida.
Yes.
And Scarface is in Miami.
Oh, yes, Scarface 1983 takes place in Miami, whereas Scarface 1932 takes place in Chicago. Of course,
we'll quickly talk about that movie because it's the movie that everyone knows. Really, it's like
we'll get into it. Talk about that. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Quintessential '80s film. Actually, it's quite 80s.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a moment. But Scarface is actually based off a book by Armitage Trail. Is his name? That's actually a pen name for the guy. The subtitle of this, in some places, was "The Shame of the Nation." I'm glad they just kept it Scarface because like I said before, we talked about Public Enemy and all this kind of stuff. I don't like these little preachy bits where they try to soften the blow a little bit. They try to go, hey, these gangsters, and he goes, they're bad guys. Oh yeah, we get that. They have to lay it on thick there, the shame of the nation. But I think that Howard Hawks, he fought a lot with the censor boards. This was like during the Hays Code time frame. And he fought a lot with censor boards. And we will talk about this. There's a bunch of different scenes in this movie, Scarface 1932, that they fought with him to soften, and he didn't like it. He was like, I'm going to make the movie I want to make as hardcore as I can make it.
Similarly, I heard that the later film also had quite a lot of trouble that they told him to cut it, and he was like, I can't cut it anymore. I'm just gonna release it.
You're talking about 1983 Scarface?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, that was directed by Brian De Palma.
And he was just like fighting the boards. They're just like,
it's rated R. It's rated R, but there's a lot of scenes in there. I know there's a scene. There's lots of cursing. In fact, if you want to talk about Scarface 1983, it probably has the most F-bomb curse words, I would say, probably in any movie for quite a while. I think there was another movie
say that Al Pacino is probably a big reason why you're coming to see Scarface 1982, right? It's for Al Pacino. He He's like the David Goldblum of gangster, or like whatever kind of music this is.
Jeff Goldblum, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Jeff Goldblum.
Guys, I don't know who David Goldblum is. Maybe that's Jeff Goldblum's brother.
No,
it's fine.
I meant Jeff Goldblum. I just haven't thought about him in a while.
It's fine. That's a terrible accent, terrible imitation.
But
okay.
yeah, they both have this appeal to them, you know?
Yeah, and you know, I just remember his accent.
Like, I feel like he's a hybrid between Jeff Goldblum and Sylvester Stallone, but that's just me. I haven't seen too much of.
Hey, you know, and Pacino is, I think he's got a lot of roles where he really does an amazing job, and then there's some where
that is if you can understand what he's saying.
Does the job. Oh, you mean in Scarface? Yeah, he's like, hey, the cockroach. You know, he calls people like cockroach. He's like, hey, he's a cockroach. Anyway, what I will tell you about the 1932 one is you would think that the name Scarface, it was based off of Al Capone. It was loosely based off Al Capone and other gangsters of the time period. There's actually a lot of the things that happen in this movie. I guess when we talk about the plot, we could kind of go into what elements were actually based on real gangsters and real situations that happened. You know, like the 1929 St. Valentine's Day massacre, which actually takes place in like a little 10-second, 15-second little part of this movie.
Which is really metal, honestly.
It was. And there's some other aspects I'll kind of bring up. But with this movie, there were elements like just the insane amount of gunfire, the murders. The relationship between the sister and Tony Camonte, the main character, was a little bit questionable in appearance, to be honest. And they kind of they softened a lot of it, but you can still see those hints of that.
Look, this movie, everything gets blown up in this movie.
Yes, it does.
And it is awesome. Like
it kind of is.
There's just something awesome about blowing stuff up, and it's like you've got like drive-by machine gun fire. You've got like they're crashing into like the buildings and such. They go in, and then there's just like and the windows come off, and like everything.
They'll shoot you anywhere. I mean, no place is safe. Not even a bowling alley. I mean, you know. There's a scene in the movie where Tom Gaffney, who is a gunner for the O'Hara mob, which is the Irish mob from Northside, played by Boris Karloff. I didn't want to tell you Boris Karloff was in this. I didn't want to spoil it for you. What did you think when you saw Boris Karloff show up?
I spotted it, and I was like, well, okay. Honestly, he didn't really make too much of an impact upon the role.
No, he didn't. And if you, one thing that you may notice is that he...
another thing is the camera died, but...
Yeah, 1 second.
But I just wanted to... there's also, like, this shot at the bowling alley, where the camera is moving away as he's dying. They get him at a bowling alley later in the movie.
Yeah, Gaffney,
and it's just
right?
like that... Yeah, that was... there's just so many good shots in this movie, honestly. Like, there's that one where they like the shooting and, like, he's shooting off all of the days of the calendar. And I was like...
Yeah, that was a very interesting stylistic
One thing about this
choice.
movie is that the shots just overflow with creativity in this movie. And
and they're very, very action-packed.
Just the shot composition is... Yeah. Like, the action was really great, much better than the previous movies we've been doing combined.
You think so? I thought it might be your favorite. Like, I mean, Public Enemy moves, but Scarface is like putting a pedal to the metal. It's like...
And then the shot composition, which is funny because, like, I'm saying shots when there's a lot of shots in this movie.
Speaking of shot composition... People. Yeah.
But yeah, like, there's, like, one where, like, there's, like, this keg that's, like, overflowing because, they interrupted him in the middle of pouring the keg. And it's just... That was a really good shot. And just at the beginning of the movie where there's, like, a street lamp and then it, dolly shots past it over to Big Louie, who's the boss sort of character at the beginning of the movie.
Big Louie Costello, yeah.
He gets off quite quickly.
Tony Camonte, the main character played by Paul Mooney, he actually he works for him.
And it just, man, I was just like surprised. Also, like the lighting in this movie, I will say, it comes close to Jekyll and Hyde 1940s lighting. Because I was talking about that MGM lighting was just immaculate. It came pretty close.
Okay, what about this? There's one thing I wanted to mention. You talk about shot composition.
Yeah, I'm gushing a lot about the shot composition. Gushing about a lot of things.
I want to say a phrase. I want to say a phrase, and I'll explain it. X marks the spot. Now let me explain what I mean by that. If you watch this movie, you will see a cross or an X is like behind them or on their clothes, or like in the bowling alley shot. You notice that Gaffney, played by Boris Karloff, he gets a strike and he puts an X on the score sheet. If you'll notice, there's X's all over the place. And I remember you the last time that we talked, you mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio in The Departed.
Ah, come on, don't do that.
No, it's okay. Listen, in the movie The Departed, I think that the director, Martin Scorsese, he homaged Scarface, I think, by putting X's like shadow. There's like a shadow of a cross behind somebody, and you know they're going to get killed when that happens. In fact, that's kind of an Easter egg in the movie. Is you know this character is going to get shot.
But in case you didn't know, last episode I said that he looks like he would be in a gangster movie. Yeah, I just meant, like a modern, cops.
Well,
criminals.
he was in Gangs in New York, The Departed.
But yeah, like cops and criminals kind of stuff I was talking about. Like, you'd see him in those movies a lot.
Well, he also played he also played the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and the makeup was atrocious. But anyway, one of the reasons why some people think the X was with the murders is because whenever they would show photos of a murder scene in the newspapers back in the day, they would write an X where the body was. They didn't have the whole thing where they draw the outline. They draw the outline of the body now. In a lot of movies and things, you see that outline. They stopped doing that, I think, for a lot of reasons, but they put an X on the ground where the body got shot. So that's an interesting way of doing that.
This movie does have some symbolism. In this case, the world is yours sign that appears frequently throughout the movie. Or by frequently, I mean 3 times.
Yes.
One close to the beginning where he sees it for the first time. He goes, "That's my motto for life." Scarface, that is Tony Montoya.
It's Montana. Tony Montana in the 1983 version. In the 1932, it's Tony Camonte.
And then they do it later when it's him and his girlfriend are looking at it, and he's
Poppy.
Poppy, and he at the end of the movie as like the last shot. It's sort of an ironic because he dies in that scene.
A guy thinks he's on top of the world. The world is yours. It can be taken away from you very quickly. There's a lot of themes in this movie. It mirrors a lot of these gangster movies at the time. There's, a gangster that works for like an underboss or, like a bigger boss than them. And, this could be Little Caesar. It could be, with that guy, with Vittori. They're more violent than the person that they work for. And they rise in the ranks and they get everything that they want. And I keep thinking of Little Caesar. He starts wearing those nice outfits and everything. And then what does Tony Camonte start doing when he starts really doing well? He starts wearing nicer clothes. Yeah, it's pretty hot, eh? Pretty hot. You keep saying,
I feel like the throughput of what these gangster movies have been saying, really, in this movie, the gangster going big is merely just having the gall to conquer what others don't.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see a thorough line from the other movies. But I feel like it's much more simplified of an effort. Whatever the effort is, it's pretty simple. It's something that people don't realize. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm on top now. I decided to do the alcohol racketing business.
Yeah, well, it's bootlegging and alcohol in the 1920s and 30s.
Yes, I was trying to be specific. This movie, similarly to The Public Enemy, since The Public Enemy also takes inspiration from Al Capone, they also do racketing as the way to power.
Yes. But that's just what that was at the time. I mean, later it's hard drugs or whatever. It's whatever the big thing is.
It's always a commodity. It's always a commodity that people want.
And it's an illegal commodity. You gotta have that.
And it's a shady illegal commodity, and especially an addictive one.
Yes. The other part of that is, that And I think this is something that they tried to, that's why they had the couple scenes that the censors basically said, you need to put this in there because they're trying to make it like, yeah, this gangster guy may look like you're starting to like him. He's likable and he's blasting, he starts blasting and you're like, I kind of like this guy, even though he's doing some really despicable things, and his personality, and the actor's doing a good job playing him. So you want to see
at the root of the person, you try and look for a true personality in these characters. You look for a root, and you just don't find them. You often realize that.
A lot of it's surface level. Yeah, I agree. But there is something about this character and the way they're being portrayed that you kind of connect with. And the censor boards at the time were like, no, you cannot connect with these characters. We have to show, because you remember the scene? There's a little scene. It feels real out of place. It's kind of toward the end. Those people, they're all talking in that room. That one guy says, oh, these immigrants, and he goes, it's making us immigrants have a bad name. You remember that scene? It's so quick and kind of, plain. That scene was actually forced upon Howard Hawks, the director. He didn't want to do that, but they were like, we got to say something about little kids, getting caught in the crossfire. Do you remember that? They were like, oh,
yeah,
little
which is
kids
all interesting, but we've talked about this stuff long enough. Just going back to wrap a couple things. Yeah, Paul Mooney is a pretty phenomenal actor for this movie. In many different ways.
He's not subtle. He's not playing it subtle. But again, I think the subtle acting, the real subtle acting, I think would come later as a lot of the people that were into the method acting would do, would kind of creep in more toward the 50s and 60s, I think.
Like, for instance, comparing The Public Enemy, where they get Punny Nose, versus in this movie where Tony gets Lovo, it's a whole world of difference, because that one scene is just so good. It's so good.
It feels more violent. It also, you see the anger and the seething hatred in
because
Tony Camonte.
Lovo is like they have his like his sister or something, and it's like, oh, my sister's too young, and so there's like competition there.
Oh well, Johnny Lovo was his boss, the guy with the mustache who was Poppy was his girlfriend first. Later on, he knows that Tony Lovo tried to have him bumped off. And so he goes, I need to get my buddy, Guino, the coin flipper guy. Got to get him and me, and we're going to go visit Johnny Lovo. And they do kill him off camera. A lot of the direct killing, they do it like off camera.
But there are some differences, though. There were a couple scenes where there was a scene like earlier on in the movie. I remember because it reminded me of a movie, or a scene from a movie. I don't remember what movie it is or what it exactly looked like, but it was either like the person was obscured by like a dresser or something, like a piece of furniture, or was in a mirror. It might have even just been a dresser, but I'm not sure on my memory here. But it reminded me of that because it was like on screen, but they didn't like show the thing, But there is some on-screen kills in this movie still, because there's a scene where this gangster dude is like rolling out of the car as they Tommy gun him, and it's just like ooh.
You talking about the one guy where they threw him out the door and he's got like a little flower in there? I think,
and you can see him like flop when the bullets go through him, and that's just striking because it's like, yeah, we haven't seen any of that before, and it's just makes so much of a better movie. And even the violence they do show is not as much as they could have shown or wanted to show. And I'd also like to bring something else up, which I feel like is another interesting discussion about this movie, because we've sort of been like, like warming ourselves up to the topic. I think, like, from the offset of this movie, the previous movies go like, oh, this is like the events of The Public Enemy, the person we must shame, right? Yeah, the message at the beginning of the movie, yeah. Instead, the intro takes the angle against the government not doing a good job, instead of focusing on the gangsters. Oh, the gangsters are the problem. Instead at all, they're just no remorse against the government. To quote, every incident is a reproduction of the actual thing. The purpose is to demand the government, so what are you going to do about it? That's a interesting take on the situation. Because not only are the gangsters a problem in general, is that what is the government going to do about it? How are we going to challenge, like, what are we as a society?
And it's not just the government as a separate entity. It's saying you are a part of that government. You people in the audience.
You have a say in the government, yeah, because it's a American democracy.
Thank you.
And not to get political, but yeah, the governments really just in general throughout history have had trouble. But at the same time, yeah, they do have that democratic element as we've been going on.
Yeah, it's in the Bill of Rights. It's in the Constitution. It says, the government for the people, by the people.
But then it like poses a question of like, we still have, stuff sort of like this, and it's just like merely evolved as with society as society has gone on. And it's so interesting to think about like, what could we be doing or have done to like in this way? Like, what are we doing about this?
Yeah, I mean, well, later on, there's a scene in the scene where they were talking about they talk about some of the police officers, and they go, well, they're scared to fight these guys because the police officers have just got revolvers, and these guys have got the machine guns. They don't call them Tommy guns. I think they bean shooters typewriter.
But yeah, the Thompson machine gun it's a portable machine gun as compared to one that would be mounted on the ground.
It's like a baby. You hold it like a baby.
And so instead of like being stuck inside of the trenches, you could walk out of them. Was the idea behind it?
That's true.
You could run out of them and have the same firepower.
You remember the part where he said, "There's a really good line where Tony Camonte says this gun is like a typewriter, and I'm going to write my name all over this city." The nickname for the Tommy gun was actually a Chicago typewriter. Because it goes tick 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 ding tick 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 tick, it has that noise.
What do you think about that? The way that this intro and like they take that angle instead of what everyone else has been doing, and it's just so much more interesting. What do you think about it?
Well, I would say it's basically not just putting the blame on somebody like a Tony Camonte or a Tom Powers. It's basically saying, yeah, these guys are bad, but wait a minute. We can stand up to them. We have the power.
There's a bigger picture in society that's like, okay, but why is this happening? For what reason is this happening? And even like a psychological element that you could do into it. Though honestly, I haven't studied way too much into that. And then there's like so many other movies about criminals.
Well, guess what? Guess what, William? Here's the thing, and we talked about this, I believe. During our Public Enemy episode, we talked in depth about prohibition. It wasn't just, people that were, criminals to begin with that were going in and drinking, the hard liquor or whatever. It was regular people. These guys are as powerful as they are because you keep buying the alcohol. I mean, I wonder if it's laying the bill, the bill is due. And the bill always comes
instead
due.
of being, like, begrudging about showing the events, it's like, this is to, like, further society, and it's like, it's completely fine to do this, but no, instead they're, like, so meddled that they're gonna be like, we're representing the actual events as best as we can, And it's just, like,
okay,
so much more gritty for it.
Let's talk about some of those events. All right, so, the same thing that Tony Camonte does, where he shoots his own boss or gets rid of his own boss, Louis Castillo. It was Big John Carlissimo and Alfonso Capone, aka Scarface. He killed off his boss, and then he gets with another boss, Johnny Torrio. I think I'm right. I'm remembering a lot of these historical details, and that's what Johnny Lovo is based off of, is Johnny Torrio. And they did go against the O'Bannon gang. And we did mention Tom Powers was kind of based off of O'Bannon. But O'Bannon had a flower shop. And if you remember O'Hara, flower shop. The guy, he goes, "You're afraid of a guy at a flower shop?" You remember that?
Yeah, and I feel like, especially as the historical element, I'm just, like, scrolling through the Wikipedia article. And there's just so much here. To dig into.
I got one for you. Supposedly, And again, this is Howard Hawks, the director. He would very often tell tall tales about this movie. He said that two of Capone's gangster guys, he said this was Capone's favorite movie, and he was really...
there's like a quote where like it's down here. You tell him if any of my boys are tossing coins, they'll be $20 gold pieces. He said he liked the film.
Yes, but that's not true. That's not true because he was already in jail. He was in jail at the time. He went to jail in 1931. He got caught by Elliot Ness and his Untouchables. They took him out for tax fraud, of all things, because they couldn't get him for anything else. He was so...
apparently this is according to George Raft, who played... Let me scroll up.
Guino Ronaldo.
He was Guino in this movie.
He was the coin flipper guy, which I heard that Two-Face was... coin flipping was based off of him.
Which is just so much interesting.
I can't verify that, though.
Because similarly, there were, like, various talks from, like, the remake of Scarface that there was, like, a genuine mob boss who was like, this movie represents what it is like, genuinely represents what it is like to live in this industry.
Well, yeah, here's the thing, too. Supposedly, two of Capone's guys supposedly came to Howard Hawks and said, you know, he's upset that this movie is based off of him. He's like, oh, this is not based off him. We're using the name Scarface, and that'll get, Howard Hawks said, that'll get people in the door. You know, it's kind of our little scam that we're running, our little misdirection that we're there.
There's a dude named Ben Het, or Howard. He said that that Mooney was too silent and moody.
But here's the thing. He could play anything. There's a story that Paul Mooney, he was in the Yiddish theater, which Yiddish is, I don't want to say this wrong, but it's like a mixture of like European languages like German and Hebrew kind of mixed together, an Aramaic kind of mix. But they had a thriving theater community in the European Jewish community, and that's where he was, where he got kind of cut his teeth on that. And when I mean cut his teeth, he was 12. One of his earlier roles, he played an 80-year-old man at 12. So he could act. He could play anything. In fact, let's see, I don't know how many, he was nominated multiple times for Academy Awards, and he won the Academy Award for playing Louis Pasteur in The Story of Louis Pasteur. That was 1936. So what are you going to say to that? You know, so some people think that he kind of overacts a little bit, but I'm like, hey, you know, she, and when I look at it, I say, she's a mine.
Someday I look at that sign and I say, she's a mine.
Good stuff. I thought he was good. I thought he was really good at this.
Yeah. There's just so many different things with this movie. Apparently the filming was 6 months. Yeah,
writing it was 11 days.
Everything was elongated by just like the ambition of the budget and just like shooting all the action scenes, which no one had really done.
Some of it was elongated by the censors, where they had them do extra stuff,
like refilm.
They had them do extra scenes and things like that.
Yeah, this is one of the most like movies that they just struck at with their hearts.
Do you want to, after we talk about the plot, do you know about the alternate ending?
Oh, here, there's an alternate ending where he, instead of dying, he gets put to court, basically, and hung.
Except during that time, they didn't do hangings in Chicago. That went out in 1920.
That's quite just a smidge out of, you know.
That was stopped in 1928. Actually, the preferred method of execution at the time that this movie was like 31, 32 would have been electrocution. And Paul Mooney wasn't even in that part. In fact, they filmed it like the back of his head and side, you know, with a lookalike. And it was filmed after, and Howard Hawks hated it. The alternate ending got in some reels of this in certain states, but Howard Hawks fought to have the original ending put back in there.
And additionally, he had to shelve it. He had to shelve it at some point because of just so much of the backlash from them that they was just like, we're gonna shelve it, and then he brought it out after like a while.
1979 is when it started getting seen again. And interestingly enough, that's 4 years before Scarface 1983. And you know that it probably didn't get filmed in 83. It probably got filmed in 82. So that made like a little time frame when, when they would have seen this movie. And of course, Al Pacino was like, he said, I love Paul Mooney. I love his acting. I wanted to do it justice. So
and apparently they had to visit like individual censor board offices in order to the piece to get this movie out. And that's just so much, wow, there's so much stuff about there. The Order Sons of Italy of America denounced the film, believing it to be offensive to the Italian community because this film is, interestingly enough, a lot more Italian than the last movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, well, there's Vittori, there's Vittori. And
Louis, he has that, like, Italian accent. They have Italian grandma. We talked about that in the
Yes, this Italian grandma, though, she is so put upon. She's like, he hurts you and he hurts me. She's talking to the sister, Cheska, and she's complaining that Tony's being very violent toward her, and,
Yeah. What do you think about the theme of excess?
Excess. Everything's got to be more. Do you remember the scene early on? I think it's when which I thought was great. I like the way that him and Poppy relate to each other. She's just like, she's having none of it. At first, she's having none of it. She's like, yeah, how's that working out for you, champ? He's like, I got my eye on this girl, and he's trying to get her. It's kind of, I like their dynamic between each other, but there's a part where she looks around and goes, kind of gaudy, isn't it? And he's like, yeah. But gaudy means like excessive, over the top, kind of bad. He doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what that means, William. He hears gaudy, or, she says, that robe kind of looks kind of feminine. He's like, yeah. It's like, that's not a good thing in your case. You're supposed to be real masculine.
Yeah, additionally, with what Lovo says about him, where it's just like, we're not ready for it. We don't need to take the north side. We're content where we are. And he's just pushing it. His motto is do it first, do it yourself, and keep on doing it.
Hey, that's the American way.
Even when it's like, unnecessary, or that we're not ready for it at this point. We're content with, we conquered the South Side. Isn't that enough? And no, it's not.
You know what? The world is not enough. It's
fear of technology with the machine guns and stuff, where they're just like, the police are unprepared for the weaponry at hand.
There you go.
And it's just like, what do we do when aliens start going warfare, and they can beam us up to space?
Yeah.
Abduct us. Like, seriously, how can we defend against that?
Okay, I'm thinking of another crime movie that came out in 2005, I believe.
Does it have does it have aliens in it?
No, but it's got a man who dresses up as an animal. You ready? So the movie's called Batman Begins, and at the end of it, Batman is talking to Commissioner Gordon on the right next to the bat signal, and he says, "What about escalation?" He goes, "Escalation?" He goes, "Yeah. I mean, here you are wearing a bat costume, jumping off of roofs. Then now we got this guy. This guy who he dresses up like a clown. He's theatrical like you are. So it's like every time you up the stakes, if somebody gets a better pistol, then there's a machine gun. Somebody gets a Gatling gun. Somebody wants to get the next big thing. Somebody's got what they used to call pineapples. But basically, they're grenades. So a lot of these things were weapons of war. And these guys, they came home from the war, 1914 to 1918. That's right before this time period. I mean, how do you think the Tommy gun got into circulation? You said it yourself. It's a way to get out of the trenches and onto the streets, and it was. Machine guns were straight out of the war. The police didn't have any kind of defense for it, and ultimately, it kind of petered out through other methods as far as the way they stop these criminals. But yeah, escalation.
Speaking of escalation, we have talked about GUNs a lot over the course of this podcast. So I just wanted to do something new and say, hey,
pew-pews.
I just wanted to say, hey, I'm William. He's Jason. We're running a movie podcast about, movies from really just all like the nerdy sciencey sort of thing. We're everywhere there's a platform, basically.
We haven't done anything with Instagram or Threads yet, and there's a plan for that.
But yeah, speaking of which, check out Twitter, WordPress, and the YouTube community tab for updates and memes. For instance, turtle races, which is something that I decided, this is funny after like seeing someone else do like a race with the votes. So I was like, I'm just gonna start posting this weekly for a small little bit, and then I stopped because I'm like, it's just
started posting.
But then it's just like, there's a dude who was like, I don't understand what on earth you're doing, and I'm like, yeah, I don't either.
I don't either. Let's have fun.
If you like what you hear, tell someone or ring us a comment, or even force people to listen to it in your car on your way to wherever you're going. Anything is appreciated. You help us grow. So, well, I talked about like a lot of the composition of this movie from the beginning, as well as like the interesting angle upon the gangsters. What were we doing about gangsters in our everyday life? I talked about how more Italian this movie is, how much more, aggressive this movie is, and
you're talking about the theming as far as you said composition. You mean like the theming?
Camera composition. What it focuses on,
like,
the design of a shot.
Yeah, cinematography. Definitely.
Yes, and by the way, we do get a barbershop early in this movie where the first time we see like Tony is like in a barbershop, and I was like, that's quite Italian, because you'd think of a barbershop in Italy. They sort of mesh together.
Yeah, but the first time you see Tony, you don't see him. He's in shadow.
Yeah, he's under a blanket.
Interesting. Well, isn't he the one that kills Big Louie at the beginning? He's whistling.
Yeah, but then there's he's under the blanket. A cop comes in and he's like, "Yo, what you doing? We're gonna take you into custody. Your people are not good people. You force yourselves to a better class with a gun. Your people who want to be somewhere. They're not good people. You've got $1,000 bills in your eyes, and someday you'll fall into a grate or something," is what he said.
Yeah, he the cop that's pushing on him shows up a lot through this movie. Guarino. Strangely enough, the character in the book Scarface by Armitage Trail, his name was Tony Guarino, and Ben Guarino was his brother, and Ben Guarino is the name of this detective guy. So, no connections? I don't think so. They kind of, with the movie, they kind of went their own way. I think they were just inspired.
Connections? I think not.
No. Ben Hecht, the writer, was a journalist, I believe, or he knew Chicago, which is why he weaved in a lot of these characters like Johnny Torrio and Alphonse Capone and Big John Calissimo, changing the names so that
he was the writer.
He won't get shot.
He was a writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the writer, but there were some other writers too. But I'm wondering if those other writers were ones who...
It's ambiguous about who wrote what, especially like who rewrote or wrote new scenes for what.
Yeah, those other people.
Because even still, what if there's a Hayes person who like wrote an entire scene? We don't know who they are.
That's what. Yeah, well, it does. When you look at the list of writers, it lists Ben Hecht along with some other people. I think Brian De Palma dedicated the movie to Ben Hecht, Scarface 1983. He says dedicated
but
to Ben
yeah,
Hecht.
he gets taken into custody, and then there's like a Herpes corpus custom or whatever. Hocus
no, I'll
pocus.
tell you what it is. It's called habeas corpus.
I got close enough. Habeas corpus, and it's basically you can't do anything without proof, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you aren't the only one who has trouble with saying this one.
Like remember the corpse? I think it was.
Well, do you remember? Yeah, it means something about the body. Is corpus means body.
Yeah, keep the body or something.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was you notice that Tony gets things wrong, and he goes, "Give me a writ of hocus pocus." He calls it a writ of hocus pocus. It's like, well, it is kind of lawyer magic.
Yeah, but yeah, Big Louie is dead. The newspapers, there's like this dude who's like, we have to put gang war in the title. Don't give me anything else but gang war. And so yeah, there's a gang war.
So are the journalists also to blame for kind of feeding off of this. They're like, oh, this stuff is bad, but it's really good for us. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. You know, if it
The dude gave me a lot of exhausted energy in his performance, honestly.
Really? Well, I would think
He's
so.
just like a dude you don't understand. Or not like in a pleading sense, but he's just like he was sort of staring off into space and going just like you've got to understand. It's just simple. Gang war. That's what we got to put. It's what we got to put.
Well, journalists are very exhausted a lot of the times because they have to keep up with all this stuff going on, you know, and it's Chicago, which is murders galore. You have to write about murders all the time. Right.
He's associated with Lewis, released by his lawyer, who got him out with the habeas corpus.
Hocus pocus.
Joins forces with Lovo. He wants to be independent and he wants to do new things. He's like, you know, the north side is pretty dangerous. Let's not do anything about that right now. And
so
then
who played,
he just takes over Lewis's territory.
So who played Johnny Lovo is Osgood Perkins. Osgood Perkins is the father of Anthony Perkins, who played the main bad guy in Psycho.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to tell because the dude in Psycho, he looked clean, man. His hair was nice. He looked young.
Yeah, but let's put it this way: Osgood Perkins did not live very long. I think he died of a heart attack or some other kind of thing. He did a handful of movies, and I think he passed. So I think that Anthony Perkins didn't know his father all that well. It didn't look like he did, but I could
I
be
guess
wrong.
he got a streak of shower murders, and then one day he just slipped on the soap.
Oh man.
And then I went him.
Okay, so
Not the real life person. I'm just making a joke. A very dark joke.
Tony visits Johnny Lovo, and you can see very quickly that there is going to be a rivalry there because Johnny Lovo is sitting on one side and Tony's sitting on the other, and in between them is Poppy. That's
and
Lovo's
then there's contention over the woman to keep the long story short.
Yes, yeah, and Tony is definitely hitting on Poppy right in front of her boyfriend. And that's not the only time he does that. He does that like 3 times.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting to compare that he's sort of, you know, breaking the mold, while in Little Caesar, at least, he was at least trying to keep sort of with his side a little bit. But at the end of the day, it kind of like, you know, just see my opportunity.
Little Caesar, a.k.a., you know, Rico, he was not interested in the ladies. He didn't look like he was. In fact, I mean, there's let's put it this way. There's some things that went on with where he's keeps talking about his old buddy and that he cares about him a lot. And it's like, okay, so there's not really any kind of love interest for Rico, but there is definitely for Tony Camonte, and there was for Tom Powers too. But it just happens to be the boss's girl, and you know that's gonna come to a head later. You can just feel it. But she's not having it though. She's not having it. He's like, "Hi," and she's like, "Uh huh." That's why I said it. She's like, you know, it's just
not until he becomes rich is she like, you know,
Well, also rich, yes, but also she, you know, Tony, you know, once Lovo gets out of the picture, I think she's able to more likely kind of give him her time. And maybe that impresses her. Maybe he's, you know, and she's kind of game for the violence too, because doesn't she like at one point she throws somebody a revolver, you know, hey, defend yourself with this, you know.
Speaking of the violence, a big part of this movie is, of course, Tony is breaking into the other side and taking over against the wishes of Lovo, and like a lot of stuff happening. I remember there's this scene where there's a shootout, and the comedy relief character who he was posted over to be like the phone secretary, but he doesn't like do his job well at all.
No, he's terrible.
And then there's just like there's like conflict, and there's like it's really loud, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you." Because he does that a lot. He's like, you know, speak up loudly while he's being like,
yeah,
shot
he's
at from
definitely
above.
the comic relief, because earlier
We haven't had a comic relief in any of these movies, so it was just a little bit more flavorful. Especially we got an Italian comic relief.
Yeah, and it's
sort of
it's
like
fine. It's fine.
what was the dude's name from Ant-Man?
Luis.
He's like, I'm gonna tell you a story. So that dude.
Yeah, Luis. Yeah.
And characters like that always are pretty good.
But early on, they send a funeral arrangement to Big Louis Costello, and it's a cross of carnations. So there's your ex again. You see Tony and not Guarino. These Enos. Tony and Guino, Ronaldo, are buddies, and they are in the car ride, and that's where they said, do it first, do it yourself, and keep on doing it. That's his motto, and you can see that they're going to be a good team, and kind of doing the bidding.
Yeah, and then there's
you also get to see his family life. You get to see Tony and his relationship with his sister Francesca, played by Anne Dvorak. And Anne Dvorak, she was good friends with the actress who played Poppy. And when they auditioned, Karen Morley, who was going to play, or who plays Poppy, she was like, oh, should I try out for Cheska? She goes, well, no, Cheska's a really good part. You should do it, Anne. And Anne Dvorak, a lot of her roles that she got later, were based off of, hey, we really liked you in Scarface. So this kind of got her on the map. She has been.
Yeah, from what I see, she wasn't really popular.
No, she wasn't super popular. She had acted in a lot of. She was like she was usually a chorus girl or whatever. She was like in the background of a lot of shots, in other movies and plays.
Yeah, basically she just traded roles with Boris Karloff, like rather like personas.
Well, this movie put her on the map, and I think people, a lot of her success.
And Boris Karloff sort of sat under the radar with this movie because it's like, I barely noticed that he was in the movie.
Well, he just got done filming Frankenstein, so he wasn't like getting shot to the moon.
Oh yeah, they do put Boris Frankenstein Karloff in this, or the monster Karloff, or whatever they did.
Yeah, and he wasn't he didn't get real well known from. Because it just said question mark, they didn't get well known from Frankenstein yet, so they were like they put his name in there, and he's not in this movie a lot, but he is in this movie a little bit,
But in many other movies and in many other different ways, the world was his.
Yes. So the relationship between Cheska and Tony is weird to say the least.
Yeah, what do you find interesting about it?
It's almost like Tony's into her. Tony doesn't like seeing her with another man, any man. I know she's young.
Oh yeah, just because she's young, he's very protective.
Guino also says you're just a kid. Remember Guino, the guy that she eventually ends up with, which is Tony's buddy. He says you're just a kid, and she keeps saying I'm 18. Maybe that's still a kid. I don't know, but that according in the U.S. that's supposed to be you're legally an adult. That's how she thought of herself. So she was like, I'm going to go out and have some fun. I mean, you get to go out and have fun. Why can't I have fun? You don't let me have any fun.
I wish I knew the world's remember the lyrics to "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." Just to say, just pretend I said the next part of the "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," and then it was funny, and then everyone laughed.
Yes, yeah, that's.
But
that's
me,
funny.
who does not know so many popular songs as many different other people, such as you. Just insert
that is the lyric. Girls just want to have fun, but yeah, Cheska definitely does. There's a part where she says, "You act more like I don't know. Sometimes I think." So it kind of feels like they won't say that you kind of treat me like a jealous boyfriend, and that's kind of how it feels. I mean, even up until the end, who is in the life or death situation with Tony Camonte at the end of the movie, but Cheska. It's Cheska and Tony, ride or die till the end. They're it's not Poppy.
Oh yeah, at the end, Tony is just like, to jump forward a little bit, I've had the police catch up with him, and they're just like outside of his mansion doors, and he's just like laughing like the Joker, man. It's great. Yeah, it's good acting. It's just so different from the way that he was before, that just, like, this shift that happened, That's when he went cuckoo. Anyway.
he's got nothing left. He's just kind of like, let's do this.
So we do get like a third wheel in this with Tom Gaffney, and O'Hara. And Tony got rid of O'Hara with Guino. He sent Guino after him. And so Tom Gaffney pops up, and he's like, declares war. And then that's where you get all the drive-by shooting segments.
Yes.
Where there's just car after car after car in many different scenes.
And you see the
crashing into like the thing, and
up.
it's so cool. It's so cool, honestly.
But Johnny Lovo is telling him not to do it, though. He doesn't want him to take out the north side. He's like, why can't we stay on the south side and let's stay out of that business. He wants to play it safe.
But yeah, he pushed through anyway. Just give me this for a moment. I just want to say that like there's something about like men, like something appealing to like men in particular, or just anyone really, just blowing stuff up and just like, you know, epic things like that. That's just sort of like, you know, that's where like Transformers and stuff, they made those to appeal to men, is just like because of cool action and stuff. And I'm a man, and you know, just like there's just something innate about explosions and, you know, action that's just like.
I thought you might be a pyromaniac a little bit here, so hey
like anytime you want to watch Speed.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to watch Speed, I'm up.
All right. So, but what I can tell you is you notice
for those who don't know, that movie has like vehicle action in it. A lot of it, pretty good.
Now, a lot of any movie prior to CGI, a lot of the explosions were real, and really big, and
yeah, a lot of budget on that.
You're kind of worried that somebody died on some of these movies. You're like, who died? But speaking of who died, so they, you know, Lovo says, you guys, you know, have been, you know, getting strong arming, like Tom Powers, strong arming these bars to carry our beer and more of it. You know, you notice they did the same thing Tom Powers was doing, and
but it just feels so much bigger in this movie.
It does. He says, "Guess what? You missed a guy." So one of the Irish gang members, Mian, he is in the hospital, and he says he will live. And they're like, okay.
Oh yeah, so there's like a shot of him with like the leg raised, and then they like
those two guys come in with the flowers, and you know, and they shoot him.
That was awesome. That was awesome, honestly.
It's really quick little scenes. There's a scene in the movie The Godfather, either part 1 or part 2. It blurs for me. Michael Corleone, who's Vito Corleone's son, he is having his child be baptized. You know, they baptize him as a baby. It's called confirmation. While they're doing that, and they're going in the name of the Father, the Son, they're doing that, and you're seeing this montage of Corleone's guys taking out people. Just
I was talking about getting a massage earlier, where it was like back at the barber shop, where the cop was like, we've got to go, and he's like, you know, but come on, I'm gonna get a massage.
I forgot about
that.
that
Part where he like the cigarette against the sheriff badge.
Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, that was so cool. I think it's either Joel or Ethan Coen, a director. They did a movie called Miller's Crossing, and there's a scene where
more X's, more crossing.
Yeah, everybody's doing these little nods to this movie. So Tony meets Poppy again. He's got jewelry. He's kind of, you know,
and he hits it up at the club, and this club it feels so much bigger than the one in Little Caesar. I'm sorry, it just in Public Enemy. It's sort of like the same style of scene as Public Enemy, and but just even bigger than like Little Caesar. What they
they do a
party gathering. They
drop a guy out of a car. It's with a note that says "Keep out of the north side," and that's because that's from O'Hara's flower shop.
I just wanted to note,
yeah,
how many sets there are in this movie, especially with all these like action scenes. They're all different from each other. Like a lot of throwaway like sets. You know, not to say that throwaway is a bad word. Just making a point here. Just so many sets, and they all look good too.
Yeah,
they do. They all look good too. They look solid. They're nice and pretty.
And
big.
a lot of them are filmed at night. Did you notice that? I mean, a lot of them are filmed at night, so you get those nice dark shadows.
just this movie feels a lot more dynamic with like its gang war because everything feels so much bigger and so much more threatening.
It's faster moving too. So if you can't sit through a 3-hour movie with about 600 F-bombs in it, then maybe you could watch this movie that has no curse words and is an hour and a half and moves like a pedal to the metal.
It's like 3 hours.
Okay,
long,
so
but Gaffney is at the bowling alley. They get Gaffney. Lovo is like, bro. Also, we got the cops because the whole thing with the Tommies. They're just like, bro, these guys just keep slipping away. This is impossible. How are we ever gonna do anything? And it's just the chieftain is just getting so mad at all this happening over this last part of the movie. Which is just so interesting.
So O'Hara,
like the chieftain has a personality.
O'Hara is pushing it.
It's just even when the chieftain is mad, that's when that's when stuff's down.
Well, O'Hara, let's put it this way: O'Hara is pushing it up. He's using the machine guns, and Tony gets the machine guns from them, and he starts putting it up. And I think once he gets the machine guns, he starts taking out these guys even more hardcore. I mean, there's like some really good car chase montage scenes.
Oh yeah, at one point there was even a car chase.
Yeah.
Which, those are great. I might mention something about that a bit later when we talk about the Scarface remake. A little something I wanted to drop about that later.
Well, they did. There's a scene where earlier on where Tony is bragging to Poppy about the riches he's got. He's like, "Let me check out my apartment. I want to show you." And he pulls the shutters, and they're made of metal. They're like bulletproof. He even says, "I got a car. It's got bulletproof glass in it. All this kind of stuff." So it just seems like he's really, protecting himself, cocooning himself. When you're in a corner, that's where he kind of cocoons himself. It becomes his cage.
Oh yeah, that's when like he was at the dance, and he was like, he sees Francesca there, and he's like, "Bro, what are you doing?" Similar to Little Caesar, where he's like, "Bro," or "Bro, what are you doing?"
Well, let me explain that. So when he came in there and he's sitting there, you notice that Lovo and Tony put out a match or a lighter for Poppy to light her cigarette off of, and whose lighter does Poppy choose? But Tony's. So and Tony and Lovo just looks at him like, mm-hmm. He even there's a part after Tony runs off for Cheska, he grabs like a salt shaker and he's kind of holding it like a gun. I'm like, and then he puts it down. If you watch it again, you'll notice that. But it seems like he's like that.
Yeah, I feel like you're holding it the wrong way. You gotta hold it behind. You gotta hold it where it faces behind you, like a bazooka, right, so that you can get the good luck from shooting it.
But that's the part where I think he goes, "I'm gonna kill him." That's the part where I think he decides to do it.
Yeah, he's like, Lovo is up to something. So he actually infiltrates the place, pretending to be part of the hit crew. So he's like, I'm sort of part of your thing. But then that turns out to be bad for him because he's like, "Oh, shoot, you're actually Tony." And then, because he's like, you must have gotten the wrong number. And then Tony's ambushes him, and then Lovo's gone. Just a great scene, by the way.
Well,
I've already said.
Tony doesn't kill Lovo though. He has Guino kill him.
But
which
still,
I think that's why they didn't show it, because Tony didn't see it. He walked off and
just the whistling part, and then just immediately into the.
There's this Italian tune that he whistles all the time before he does a murder, and there's a part where and you can see the evil, the rage, like we talked about earlier in Tony's eyes, and he starts whistling that tune, and it's just really creepy, and and Lovo knows he's gonna die.
And then we've got Seska or Cheska, which is like a shortening of Francesca.
Yes.
Is with Guino, and then Tony's like, "What are you doing with Guino?" And he gets Guino.
Yeah, well, see, Tony goes out of town. Tony goes out of town for a month.
Yeah, Florida.
And Guino
kind of gets... Funnily enough, we just talked about Florida. Daytona.
Guino
and Scarface.
Guino didn't really choose Cheska. He's like he keeps pushing back, but Cheska's really wants to go for him. Whenever Tony gets back, he goes straight home, and he says, "Where's Cheska?" And the mom says, "Oh, well, she moved out with a man, and they're on this." And he's like, "I'm gonna get him." He goes over there and he finds out it's Guino, and he still kills him. But
and then she's like, "Bro, What have you done?
But
you're a monster.
You're a butcher. You're a butcher.
You're a butcher. Yeah, that's what she says. You're a butcher. And she runs away. And apparently she was, like, married at that point already.
Yeah. So it was legal. Come on, man.
Just, there's a bite to this scene, you know?
Yeah. And the other part, but this is what did it. Did you notice that there's a point of no return? The point of no return for Tom Powers was when he decided to go to take revenge on Matt, his buddy Matt. Take revenge on Matt and go after the gang.
To avenge Matt by trying to deface the gangsters when he knew he couldn't.
Right. That rain scene. Okay, so this one, it's whenever he kills Guino, because what happens is the cops get Tony for the death of Guino Ronaldo.
Yeah, the cops finally got a warrant for him, and then so there's just like they're in their mansion, and there's like this whole big confrontation and everything from the outside, and he's like laughing his head off at like with Francesca in the room.
And
then they put like tear gas in there.
She's violent too, though. You notice that she says, "You're you and I'm me," and which is she could be saying, "Hey, I'm okay with you now," or this is who we are. We're Camontes. We're
when push comes to shove,
we're murderers. Yeah, I guess I'm a murderer too. It's like, oh man, and they do they throw the tear gas, and he's like, oh, Jessica,
he gets like the tear gas, and then like Francesca gets killed like in the tear gas when the tear gas is happening.
She gets shot, yeah, and
then the police get down the door, and then Tony's just like, he's pleading, like come on. You're not gonna get me, and then he makes a break for it, but then he trips and falls in the gutter and dies, just like the prediction from the beginning of the movie. You're gonna fall in the gutter.
Right, I said you fall in the gutter. Yeah. And
then it pans up to the world is yours sign at the end.
Yeah, she's
which
a mine.
Which is just so ironic.
She's a mine. The world is yours. And honestly, the world is ours. The world is the viewer. He's saying the world is yours. What are you going to do with it? Again, it's pointing the finger at you going, it's not really his. The world is not his. It's not, it's all of our world. And what are we going to do with it? It's, if this stuff gets out of hand, whose fault is it? It's kind of pointing that finger back at the audience again. But I think a lot of that is the censors. I think the censors kind of, and you remember we talked about the Hays Code where they're like, we can't show cops, being inefficient or not doing their job, not doing well. The cops were bad. It didn't say the cops were bad. It said the criminals were bad, and they're gonna get theirs. And but see, the thing is, Tony went out like kind of some people might think he went out like a boss. Yeah, he went out on his own terms. That's why they added that. But compared
to the alternate ending. Where they call it, the coward's ending, where he went out like a coward and the honorable death at the trial and the hanging, which is still really weird to me why it's a hanging. But
yeah, it also reminds me of this. There was another movie. It was Angels with Dirty Faces, and at the end of the movie, James Cagney's old partner, who's now like a priest, he says, these kids look up to you. They look up to you, and they think you're just the coolest guy because you're a criminal. When you go off to go to your death, you need to beg for your life like a coward. You need to beg. And he goes, I can't do that. I can't, they can't let. And at the end of the movie, I'll tell you the spoiler. He actually begs for his life, like a coward. And that gets put in the newspaper. And again, that's what causes those kids to go, hey, we don't need to lead this life of crime. He's full of it,
And even still, Public Enemy, he didn't go out like a coward as much as he did humiliated.
He did, because remember the last thing he did was he was like telling his mom, "Can I come home now?" And hey, Matt, or not Matt, Mike. Hey, Mike, we're okay.
Yeah,
right?
See, still, I tell you, they have so similar names. It's
they do.
Problem.
Four letters starts with an M. Okay. But yeah, that's Scarface, 1932.
Okay, what did you think of this thing?
Well, I won't put. You said it was. You said it was stinking good.
It's stinking good. Yeah, it's stellar.
I think it really is well done and good. In some ways, I think what saves the Public Enemy for me is James Cagney, but with this movie, it's a lot of the stuff surrounding. But with these movies, they are actor movies. You go, hey, that is Paul Mooney's role. He is Tony Camonte. He is Scarface. He's a character. James Cagney, he is Tom Powers. He's the reason why you want to watch this movie. It's the same thing with Paul Mooney. It's his force of personality. And they tell very similar stories, but I like them both. But Scarface, though, I think that it's pacing. It's pacing and how hardcore it goes. How hardcore it goes is really, what I think saves it. Even though the censors put their stuff in there, but they didn't cut everything. And it was at least true
I feel like there was a
vision.
lot of, like things in this movie that you don't see from like the previous gangster movies that we did. But I still feel like there's still some root in like, there's a formula sort of to it, that's sort of, it can get old after a little while, sort of those sort of formulas.
That's true.
I'm just saying, like, the remake really did implant itself from, it's a unique movie. It's like, in the midst of like the movies, it pulled a Borat.
Okay.
It pulled a Borat.
Before I say what I'm going to say, I need you to explain that.
Borat was like in the midst of like a bunch of different things that were just like, I don't know the era that well, but I will say it's just like, it's something that pops out from like everything that was before it and in the midst of it.
Yes, but that
you can appreciate looking back.
But it'll
on.
never come again. You can't. It's those kind of things are very like lightning in a bottle. Okay, so what? Okay, AFI, American Film Institute, they have groups of movies that are like genre movies, and they give like the top 10. Public Enemy and Scarface, and the remake of Scarface are in the top 10. But
yeah, all the movies we've been talking about have. I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes. They have around like 90-ish tomato meter, 80-ish audience score, sort of things. The one thing though, Public Enemy has 100% tomato meter, which Scarface has just below that, which is interesting to think about. They have about the same audience score, in case you're wondering.
Honestly, I have a hard time with old movies being given Rotten Tomatoes scores, because you have to go with what they thought at the time. And there was, I remember a day and a year that there was no Rotten Tomatoes website. It was just, how many stars did it give? 2 thumbs up, 1 thumbs down. It was Siskel and Ebert or the 5-star system. So, you were talking about the formula of these kind of movies. The next movie in our Golden Gangsters, its time frame is later. It's like in the 1940s, 50s, kind of a little bit further forward. It's out of the gangster time frame when they were hardcore now
and into the film noir.
Yeah, this is more film noir.
Especially with Humphrey Bogart, who was in the Maltese Falcon.
He was definitely Maltese Falcon. And Sham Spade. And Casablanca as well. So the thing about this...
Oh, speaking of which, I see another movie here that also has 100% tomato meter, which is The Roaring Twenties. It's James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart.
Yes, I've seen that.
That interests me. I mean, I'm not biased by the 1,000 tomato meter, just as much as we watched Public Enemy about everything without looking at tomato
pretty
meter.
Good. Roaring Twenties is pretty good.
But yeah, I that interests me. I'm just like, ooh, James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart.
It takes you through the very start of Prohibition all the way to the end.
I'm gonna get back to you on that about what I think about that movie.
I will send you a link and you tell me what you think. All right, so but Key Largo is not necessarily part of this gangster formula. The main reason why this movie is in here is because it is about people. I haven't seen this movie, so it's people trapped in one location that cannot leave, and they have amongst their number. They find that they have a gangster, played by
it's like the
Edward G. Robinson,
or like a Shining situation. Where it's like, the one murder
instead of
trapped in a hotel in the snow.
It's a locked door. A lot of times they have these locked door mysteries. Okay.
Oh, is that why it's called Key Largo?
we did this twice before we go sign off tonight. What was the one the monster walks and the old dark house? You have a storm of some kind. You can't leave the house. You need to be there. You have the drama of these people rubbing up against each other socially, and you're dealing with, well, this person doesn't like this person, or this person is threatening this person. And in this case, Key Largo takes place during a hurricane in Florida. So that's what we're going to watch next time. That's going to be a little
Another
bit
Florida
of
movie.
a different pace.
I just
Florida
wanted to,
again.
Yeah, talking about like a violent mix or whatever you said. This movie really combines elements from both Little Caesar and the Public Enemy, and then it adds on like heroin conflict and destruction, and like let's talk about the shot composition and stuff. That just brings it for me. Whatever you think overall about this movie, I think that this is it's better overall of a movie.
Yeah, and also this is a movie,
but so do the other movies.
This is a movie that's it's PG. I'd say PG-13 if it were done today. But
it's a nice watch. It deserved to be remade.
I would rather my kids see the 1932 version than see the 1983 version any day. Sorry.
And then also, it also deserved for the remake to be turned into a video game, which I just wanted to mention.
It's called Scarface. The World Is Yours.
Scarface. The World Is Yours. PlayStation 2. It's people really like that game for a great deal of reasons. People like Grand Theft Auto because, especially how one of the games was called Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and it takes place in Miami,
right?
And in the 80s, and Scarface, the remake, takes place in Miami in the 80s.
Very Scarfacey, yeah.
And also, for many of the reasons people like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which is like one of the most famous ones. If you've heard this theme song, then you know what I'm talking about.
The censors thought that those games glorified violence too. So again,
the only difference is that it added a well-integrated substance empire management simulation element as well, which
substance empire.
Yes, which provides a lot of risk and tension when you're spinning many plates and defending all of your business ventures, as well as being. Another thing is you're disincentivized in this game for shooting cops, and you can't shoot civilians, which in the Grand Theft Auto games,
bring down the heat.
You could. Although they did bring in like a cop system in the fifth game, which is like the latest one. The sixth entry hasn't come out yet as the recording of this, and it also makes me think of another similar game, Red Dead Redemption, which also has a cop system in it. Which I might confuse a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of those games where if you go too far and your actions push too far against the morals of the time, I mean there are consequences. And to be able to get in a game and do whatever you want to anybody you want.
But this is a game where like you could be running a cartel somewhere and then the cops track up to you. So you get in a ski boat, one of those, tiny boats, the motor boats. And then you go off to like a whole nother location to like get your other thing quickly before like a car chase runs out on like a bridge. And then you get like, you fall off the bridge because you get the police just gang up on you at the end of this bridge. And it's just like, man, is it that's why the people like the game a lot, because it's like Grand Theft Auto, it's another like open world thing, but it doesn't have that element of managing anything, because it's a lot of quest systems and stuff like that, like a story system, and like obviously the independence of the open world element.
We've gotten on a tangent here, by the way.
And then also like people like the Scarface remake, just for a lot of the things that it did, many of the different messages, although the game doesn't really reflect that because it obviously doesn't end like the movie did, which he went down in the Scarface movie, and in this game you started out with winning the battle that got him in the movie. You just win it, and then it's like, well, okay, now time to make a cartel empire. Anyways, so next episode, Key Largo, Humphrey Bogart.
Right.
As well as the Roaring Twenties. Whenever I think of that,
Edward G. Robinson and Lauren Bacall.
Honestly, the premise sounds really interesting because it's like, you've got like a thing from another world. That movie. It's like,
yes,
they're out in the snow and there's like an imposter. There's a imposter alien who shapeshifts into other people. They gotta figure out who it is. And then like The Shining, where there's like a murderer in this. They're trapped in the snowed in into a hotel. In this, a gangster in a mansion.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of like a hotel. It's kind of a hotel there in the tropical part of Florida. So with that, I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight, whatever time it might be for you. We have been Cinematic Fantastic.
And again, if you liked some of us talking about this movie, we'll be up for the next. I'm really excited. And again, if you like us, and if any of the other passengers in the car that you're blurring this in without their permission or want or like of any podcast, and they've changed their mind and they want us to hear the next episode, then good on you.
Whatever that means. But like, subscribe, and comment, please do. We appreciate any kind of support we get.
Check out some of the other stuff that we do. We do some other stuff as well, where we like to dip our toes into some variety of things, such as that time when we played Frankenstein through the eyes of the monster on our channel. We live streamed that. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, you could also check out our other bonus episodes that we did on Cinematic Classics.
We also reviewed the Boy and the Heron movie, Studio Ghibli. If you like Studio Ghibli, and that's like the most recent movie. What did we think about that? And also, there's like, something really big about that movie that they just mess up. And what is that? You'll have to find out.
Yep, we talk about that in the video. But see you next time. Have a good one. I've been Jason, and this is William for Cinematic Fantastic.
Peace. Especially after all this conflict. Peace be unto you and unto men.
Yes. Say hello to my little friend.
This has been William and Jason. Say hello to my little friend. He says like really mumbly, like, my little friend.
Yeah, he does.
My little friend.
Little friend.
But he's like shouting at the same time, which is really weird. How on earth does he do it?
So say good night to my little friend!
Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon!